You're listening to Canada Reads American Style, the only podcast by two librarians from Michigan who love Canada Reads and Canadian literature. Welcome our hosts, tech guru, baker, and historical romance reader Shauna, and content provider, dog lover, and nonfiction and realistic fiction reader Rebecca.
Hello and welcome to Canada Reads American Style. I'm Shauna.
And I'm Rebecca. And in the fall of 2020, Shauna and I put out a call and asked others on Bookstagram for funny book recommendations because we really, truly needed something to laugh about at the end of last year. And Son of a Critch was a popular choice from the readers and a book that we both absolutely loved. So today we are very excited to have comedian, star of CBC Television's This Hour Has 22 Minutes, and author of national bestsellers Son of a Critch and An Embarrassment of Critches. So welcome, Mark Critch.
Thank you. It's my big honor to be here. Thank you so much for thinking of a little old Canadian.
So my first question is, have you done any other interviews for American podcasts or anything like that? Are we your first?
You know what? You may well be my first American podcast. I've done British ones. I've done lots of Canadian ones, but I think very well you may well be the very first. So congratulations. I don't know what that gets you, but it's a big treat for me.
We're going to put that in the notes to maybe really highlight that we were the first Americans. So I think that's excellent. So
Americans are good at discovering things like, and planting flags like on the moon. So I consider myself a flag planted atop my giant head.
Excellent. I love that. Okay. So truthfully, most of our listeners for our podcast are in Canada, but we do have a lot from the US and actually around the world. So many of them will already know everything about you. And honestly, some of our listeners, maybe not so much. The first thing I want to ask you is kind of to go back and reference your first memoir, which was absolutely hilarious, but also really beautiful in so many ways. But I wanted to know how you would describe growing up in Newfoundland, because it is different than probably what most non-Canadians know about when we think about Canada.
Yeah, so Newfoundland, if I was an American, I would explain that we are an island province partially. Labrador is the official name is Newfoundland and Labrador. So Labrador is a part that's on the land attached to the North American continent, and Newfoundland's this little island like the Canadian cold version of Hawaii. We joined our countries around the same time. We were our own nation. We had our own flag. We fought with our own regiment during the First World War. We joined Canada, or they joined us in 1949. And the fishery is what really propelled our province for hundreds of years. Now it's more oil and gas and tourism. And Americans would also know us as the place that took planes in after 9/11. And there's a Broadway musical about Newfoundland and Labrador called Come From Away. But growing up there, it's a small population, 500,000 people on a giant landmass. And was very safe growing up. It was very much Catholic and Protestant, very Irish in a lot of ways. Wicked senses of humor, because there's lots of tragedies when people work on the sea and things like that, and harsh weather. So people developed a pretty dry, acerbic sense of humor. So a lot of comedians, a lot of musicians come from Newfoundland because it's such a small place with little communities, and you need to entertain each other through the cold, long winter. So you better be able to do something. I am not very talented, so I talk basically for a living. So that's about it. No, it's a wonderful place, funny and very welcoming, and it's one of the friendliest places in the world, and a great place to grow up.
Is it really beautiful too? Because I sort of sense that people talk about Atlantic Canada, and it's the beauty of it, of the natural sort of beauty of it.
Yeah, in the summers we'll get icebergs that come down out in the water, big giant icebergs. Whales hop out. I've seen dozens and dozens of whales jumping out of the water in my life and splashing down. Big green rolling hills, some mountains, lush nature and waterfalls, big giant waterfall here, Churchill Falls powers not only Newfoundland and Labrador and other provinces, but also Quebec. Just, so it's a place of natural wonders, sort of like Iceland, if Iceland had a drinking problem. I would say would be how I would describe the lush fruit. It's like it's like Iceland, New Zealand, and Newfoundland and Labrador are sisters, and Newfoundland and Labrador is probably the harder sister who didn't get asked to the dance as much, but was way more fun to hang out with.
I have to tell you that Shauna has told me that I am not allowed to laugh out loud because she doesn't want to have to try to edit all that out. So I just want our listeners to know I'm laughing, but I'm keeping my mouth shut. So, okay, thank you for that description. I think it's fantastic.
It paints a picture.
Yeah, in the first chapter of An Embarrassment of Critch, which is your new book, it begins with your father asking you, what do you want to do when you grow up? And you seem to have made a truly conscious decision to pursue comedy and acting without heading to New York or Los Angeles or Toronto. And I wondered, in the beginning of your idea of your career, what did you imagine success would look like?
For me, I really wanted to be, I grew up in a place where there's a lot of theater and comedy and music in Newfoundland and Labrador. And I guess it's like Ireland in a lot of ways, in that we really celebrate our entertainers and writers. And we write very specific stuff about the place we're in and the culture. And for me, it was always to be a part of that tradition. And I wanted to write Newfoundland and Labrador stories, and which are a bit different than Canadian stories in a lot of ways, because we had our own identity, because we only joined in 49. And we had a much longer history than the country we joined, really. So I'd look around. There were shows like a show called Codco and Wonderful Grand Band. These were on TV, and these were local comedians who had gotten a national audience. And that sort of thing is always what appealed to me, was being able to not have to change my accent, or I never wanted to be, Cousin Larry on Three's Company, or something like that. Like, I didn't want to just go, I want to get on a sitcom. I want to get on a sitcom. I want to get rich. Like, that never interested me. It was always like writing and telling my own stories and being able to do those for a living, whether that living was great and fantastic or just eking by. That was what I wanted to do. And it kind of worked out better than I expected. But I never expected fame and fortune or anything like that.
I lived in Los Angeles in my early 20s, and everybody I knew, they were there to be an actor, singer, dancer, whatever. And I remember them asking me what I was doing. And I thought, I'm just living here. I wasn't planning to do anything like that. So that's interesting. Thank you. Now, you also share details about your interaction. I love the book, Embarrassment of Critch, because I learned so much, and I'm the kind of person that when I read something, I look everything up. So I was looking up the names of all the politicians. So I learned a lot that I didn't know. And I absolutely loved it. I thought it was so fascinating, your whole, that sort of young adulthood kind of path. But you detail your interaction with many politicians and celebrities, and end with a chapter on Justin Trudeau. And then you state, comedy is not an exact science. Sometimes I made mistakes. And I'm wondering, what do you see as your biggest mistake? And have any of those mistakes kept you up at night?
Well, I think comedy can be, it's a double-edged sword. It can make someone's, you want to be laughing with people, not at people. I always think of cartoons, in a newspaper or an old silent movie. It's funny when Charlie Chaplin kicks the hobo, kicks the policeman in the bum and runs away. But it's not funny if the policeman kicks the tramp in the bum and runs away. Same thing, same action, same people involved. It's just who kicks who is what makes it, right or wrong. And so I always thought about kicking up, the politicians and things like that. But they're people too, and they have their own troubles and their own reasons they are trying in their own way. One would hope, for the most part, to do right by people. And there was this, and sometimes when somebody gets maybe a bystander gets taken out by a joke, or it affects their life in a different way, I feel a bit bad. There's one member of parliament in Canada, and by the name of Carolyn Parrish, and she was very upset with George Bush and the Iraq War and the whole axis of evil and Dick Cheney of it all. And she said things like, "Oh, Americans, I hate the bastards," and things like this. And it had gotten picked up by microphones. It had been in the press, and the prime minister had been asked about it because George Bush was coming for a visit. And it was this little thing that was, it had become an issue, but it wasn't huge. And so I had her on the show, and I brought along a little George Bush doll, and I was trying to get her to apologize to the doll. And while we're filming, we're doing some what we call B-roll. So it's, the part of a news story when the person isn't being interviewed, but for some reason there's voiceover over them making photocopies in the office, that kind of a thing. So we're just doing that. And she'd taken the George Bush doll, tossed it on the ground, and stomped on it. And I thought, oh, okay, well, that might be fun. I don't know, maybe we use that, maybe not. But when it was being fed up through the system, because we had to fly back to Halifax where we tape our show, and we were in Ottawa. And so it had been ingested kind of before you could just take a disc and run with you. It was being sent to Toronto, then to Halifax through satellites. Someone there knew, saw it before my plane landed. They had run the raw footage and said, "Here's Carolyn Parrish stomping on a George Bush doll." And by the time I landed, it had become an international incident. The prime minister asked her to step down. The White House in the press conference at the White House, they were asked about it, and there was all this worry about what would happen when George Bush came and all that. And so her career kind of really hit the brakes, and it wasn't really my fault because it had gotten taken away, but I certainly regretted putting her in that position for the way it happened, And sometimes when you're dealing with big figures like on our show, people get in trouble for things they say or do, or it affects them in some way or another. And so, yeah, if it ever gets away and it's not the intent of what's going to happen, then I certainly do regret that kind of thing. But we're friends now. We keep in touch. I gave her the George Bush doll, and our grandchildren play with it.
Oh. Now, before you started on 22 Minutes, were you really into politics? I mean, was that something you were really passionate about or stayed on top of?
Well, growing up in Newfoundland and Labrador, politics is sport, like you talk about it we're big personalities with big accents, and they call each other names, and they're very passionate. So it's way more interesting than politics at other places. So you are well aware of it growing up. I had done sketch comedy in a show called Review, and every year we would do a local TV show and do stage shows to like 1,000 people a night and tour the province. And it's a review of comedy sketches of the news from the last year as a look back at the year that was. And I also wrote a column for the local paper talking about politics, making fun of it. And I would do radio commentaries on CBC, which is our BBC. So yeah, I was always well aware of what was going on and had been kind of preparing for the 22 minutes fake news desk kind of a thing pretty much my whole life in a lot of ways.
Well, I know too that one of the people I read a lot about is Doug Ford. So I kind of follow a little bit of Canadian politics, and I know Doug Ford is always under fire by everybody. So I think no matter which side you're on, I guess. But now, as many of our listeners know by now, I'm sure pretty much everybody knows this, Son of a Critch has been made into a new comedy series. I'm so excited. I cannot wait. And I'm just wondering if you can talk about that experience and when it might air, and will Americans be able to watch it, or how's that going to go?
Yeah, it airs on CBC in January 4th. It will air. There's 13 episodes. It will, we are now in the process of talking about Lionsgate is a great company, and they are our international distributors and our American partners. And they are currently shopping it around. And it looks, I'm fairly confident that we will be able to announce fairly soon some sort of an American channel and a streaming service in which you can view it. I think it gets first play in Canada, and then it will be coming your way, I would hope and imagine. But yeah, so this is the TV version of my first book. My good buddy, Tim McAuliffe, was a writer and producer for The Office and with Jimmy Fallon and Last Man on Earth and a bunch of shows. So he said, this really should be a TV show. And so we pitched it to Project 10, Andrew Barnsley, who produced Schitt's Creek. And he loved it. And then next thing I went to CBC and they bought it. And next thing we're off to the races. And then for casting, I had to find the young me. And we hired this wonderful casting agency who had done a lot of work in Ireland that had done a lot of the casting for Game of Thrones. And they found me this guy, Benjamin Evan Ainsworth. And Benjamin is just turned 13. He is playing Pinocchio in the new live action Disney Pinocchio opposite Tom Hanks as Geppetto. And he was just in a show called The Haunting of Bly Manor on Netflix, which is a great show. It's a kind of like a scary show, and he's terrifying in it. And but he's a wonderful young man, best child actor I've ever seen, probably one of the best actors I've ever seen. It's incredible. And then through that same agency, they suggested getting the scripts of Malcolm McDowell, star of Clockwork Orange and Entourage and Time After Time and a million things. And he asked for the scripts, and then he asked to read the book, and then we had a great conversation, and he said, I'll do it. I want to do it. So we have a fantastic cast. Some people there listening might know this guy, Alan Doyle, from the band Great Big Sea, and also another great author and a great singer-songwriter who's been in all kinds of movies like Robin Hood with Russell Crowe and stuff too, and is incredible. He's scoring the show with my friend Keith Power from Newfoundland, who scored Hawaii Five-0, the new version, and a bunch of shows in the States. So we have an all-star team. The show is, it may surprise people, it's got a lot of heart. It's probably as touching as it is funny, and it's very funny. And we have some great directors too. Jay Baruchel, who is a well-known actor, comedian, also an author, but a lot of people will know him from his movies with people like Seth Rogen, and he directed some of it. And so I couldn't be happier. It's the best thing I've ever done by far. And I can't wait for people to see it. I think they're going to fall in love with the characters and this amazing cast. And I think they're really going to enjoy it.
So do you think it'll be like Schitt's Creek in the sense that it will like carry on for seasons? I mean, you don't see this as like a short run season or series.
Well, no, we shot first season of 13 episodes, and that was the year of me in grade 7. So the first episode is the first day of school. The last episode is the last day of school, and we go through Halloween and Christmas and everything, the school dance and everything that's good would happen to you. It's set in 1986, and so hopefully then we would do the 8th grade next year. Yeah, so we could go for a while. This podcast could conceivably be in season 32. So hang on, the person playing you might not have been born yet. Going to be very exciting.
Yeah, there you go. Well, I have to say, in the first book, the thing that I love, the thing that made me laugh, and every time I thought about it or reread the line, it made me laugh out loud. And it was when you had written a letter to excuse yourself from band practice. Mm-hmm. And I said to everybody that I talked to, I said, it was hilarious. The thing that was so hilarious about it was you would just lie. And there was no shame in your game at all. You would just lie and you would just try to cover your tracks. And I just thought that was so funny. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that whole, the nuns made me play the cello. And that's an episode actually of the show. They forced me to play the cello. So it's it's quite interesting to see. They recreated my whole childhood home, and some of the furniture that was in my parents' house is actually in the set. It's incredible. And it's a really good looking show too. It's shot beautifully, and I really think people will like it. I hope they do anyway. And when it comes out, I had to get you guys in a couple episodes and let me know what you think about it.
Oh, absolutely. So my question then related to the series is, when you wrote your book and it was published in, I think it was 2018, did you even remotely in your wildest dream think this might happen?
No, God, no, that's never the plan, It was just trying to, it's just fast. It's just nice to get it out there, and a little tribute to my parents and the people who raised me, who knit me, as we say here. And no, never had an idea. My friend Tim suggested it, and I thought, oh, that seems like, I don't know, that seems silly. And then we went to the Just for Laughs festival in Montreal that summer, and we had written up a document. We pitched it to a couple places, and there was a lot of interest, and CBC just kind of bought it on the spot. So off we were to the races, and then it's very different. It's a lot different than the book, It's a different sort of it's a different medium, and I know well, but it was a different form of the medium I know well. So it was really nice. I learned a lot. But it is exactly what I wanted to do. And this is like the first time I've ever, because I'm executive producer, showrunner, writer. I'm playing my father in the show. So it was first time I've been able to say, no, it's going to happen like this. That's it. No, this is the song we're playing. This is the wallpaper. This is the, like, you get to make all these decisions. So if this fails, it is completely my fault. But if it's a success, it's because of everyone working on it. But if if it fails, it will be Critch's folly. Don't you worry, and you'll never hear from me again. There will be no third book. It'll just be me in the corner going, you know who I used to be? I used to play Donald Trump on TV. Okay, sir, you're gonna have to leave. It's true. I was tremendous. I really was. I was the best ever and the best writer of books next to the Bible. But our Lord said it's a pretty good book. He's a personal friend and he golfs at Mar-a-Lago. So like that would be me. Sir, you had to move on. So we hope it'll be okay.
Okay, thank you so much for doing your Donald Trump impression for me. That's my favorite. I think yours is better than the other sort of famous one that gets played a lot. But anyway, well, you kind of mentioned something, and here's my last question for you, but you kind of mentioned a little bit here. So Shauna and I absolutely, like millions of people around the world, absolutely love both memoirs. And we're wondering if you have more books in your future, or it sounds like you're going to be probably too busy with everything else that you're doing.
I really enjoy writing the books, and it's lovely to have them out. And what's a great thing is you meet wonderful people like yourselves who've read them and enjoyed them and have questions about them. And so it's a much more, I find writing books to be a much more personal way of communicating with people than doing stand-up or sketches or acting or whatever. It stays with people longer. They have their own version of it in their head. So it's lovely to see as well, like you just mentioned, a passage that connected to you. So it's neat hearing different things that other people like about it. I'd like to do another memoir that's more maybe a bit more disjointed, not like a section this year to that year, but just David Sedaris style, kind of different short stories. And there's a novel I want to try. So there's all kind of stuff like that. I think I might try the novel thing next because I have an idea that's been ticking in my head for a while, and I just kind of get it out. So it's like, that's out. So that might be next. But for right now, if the series is successful, then I have another 13 episodes to come up with. It's just really exciting to focus on this now because it's just so wonderful to work with all these people. And Malcolm McDowell is just a wonderful, wonderful guy. And this young man, Benjamin Evan Ainsworth, is great. We have a lot of young people in the cast, and they're all wonderful. So it's a great time to be creative. It's fantastic.
Well, Mark, we cannot thank you enough for chatting with us. And definitely, I have to say, when you get your novel out there, especially, that would be really exciting. So we would love to have you come back and chat with us in the future.
I will chat with you anytime. Rebecca, Shauna, you're just fantastic. And I really appreciate you. Of all the books you could talk about, picking mine. It's a real honor.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe on Instagram at Canada Reads American Style. Bye.